And if you have any other questions that come up after this webinar, you can contact your TriStar sales representative or TriStar. Go to TriStar's website, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. So we'll get started shortly. I did want to bring up just a link to our time-limited offers on TriStar's website. So you have the link listed on the screen, www.tristar.com website, and you can go in there and take a look at what kind of nice things we have available for this quarter. And what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at the second part of our Creo Illustrate webinar series. We're going to take a look at something called the sequencer. This is really a tool developed to create a sequenced set of steps, such as for work instructions. We're going to also take a look at just the general animation module. The sequencer and the animation functionality can both create animations, but really the animation side is just meant for general animations, not for really step-by-step instructions. Typically for step-by-step instructions, companies will want to print out maybe a sheet for each instruction, or publish each step to to a handout or a PDF page. Whereas the animation can typically the animation is used for creating things like movies and something used for playback. That's just one page that shows the product. We're also going to take a look at the enhancement to Creo Illustrate that was put in the Illustrate 3.1, and that's support for electrical schematics. So if you are using the Creo Schematics application, which allows you to lay out both in 3D or, well, in 2D and then in 3D on the CAD side in Creo Parametric, any kind of cabling or wiring, Creo Illustrate can import those schematics and give you the ability to document those visually, just like you would a figure of a mechanical component. So you can color the individual paths, the individual cables, the individual routing information, as well as call out specific components for assembly or for troubleshooting purposes. We're also going to take a look at for those who are using PDM systems such as Windchill, how Creo Illustrate can be integrated into your product development system like Windchill. So if I have CAD information that resides in Windchill that's coming from the CAD tools, how can I reuse that information and also manage my illustrations in terms of revisions and iterations directly in the PDM software? And also, if engineering changes some of those CAD designs, how can my illustrations be updated, or how can it be notified if there's any changes to the illustration that needs to be updated? So, kind of going back into what we covered last time, for those new joining us today, Creo Illustrate is a illustration tool. It's able to reuse 3D and 2D data from CAD systems. Obviously, you can also import things from neutral files like step files, IGES, Parasolids. Creo Illustrate supports the Creo Unite technology, so you can directly import supported files from other CAD systems on the market, like systems from Dassault, Siemens, and Autodesk. It integrates seamlessly with Creo parametric files, so whether they're in Windchill or standalone on a folder, I can import those files directly. And of course, other data formats. I can also import 2D formats. So sometimes you might have existing illustrations in a vector format, I can combine both the 3D and the 2D in Illustrate directly. We're going to take a look at some other things today, such as the sequencer. So this is really a functionality meant to create interactive steps for assembly or disassembly. And if you want to provide those instructions either in an electronic form or in a printed format, this sequencer allows you to create those specific steps and manage them within the Creo Illustrate illustration. The sequencer, when it's created for a figure, is tied to that figure. You can have a sequence that's tied to another figure, so you can manage multiple sequences. There might be components in one sequence that are already disassembled, and you might want to create another sequence that hides out those components and disassembles other components. So each figure itself can have components represented on it, and then each of those can have a sequence. And the sequencer can then be published either to a Creo view format if you're looking at this inside of Windchill or sharing it electronically, or each of those sequence steps could be published to a page in a PDF, for example. The animation module allows a user to create just a general animation. So this could be an animation, again, of a component, how the components are put together or taken apart, or a cutaway with some components, maybe the cover's taken off, and you can take a look at what's inside that assembly. You can then also put some additional objects like arrows, tools, and animate those. So if I want to animate a specific direction of assembly or disassembly, I can put in some of those effects. And I can export those to Creo view format. So if I'm storing this within Windchill, I can just have people log in through Creo view and access those animations related to that product, or I can export those animations to other file types for sharing outside of Windchill, maybe for sales presentations or service instructions or for your customers. And then I can export those out to some of the standard movie formats, like the Microsoft format, MP4s, AVIs, and so on. If finally we'll take a look just briefly at the schematics integration. This allows me to, and this is an optional module to Creo Illustrate. Not everyone is kind of documenting electrical schematics, so this is an add-on that can be purchased and added on to Creo Illustrate. But this allows you to kind of either take the 2D schematic that's created and color different areas, highlight different areas. But also, if you have a 3D model that's driven off of that schematic, it allows you to create figures that the two can be published either side by side, or if you're publishing this to Creo view, you can enable a cross highlighting between the two modes. Right? So I can take I can click on the 2D wiring diagram, and then the 3D model or the 3D cable or the connector would highlight on the corresponding 3D model. Right? So for the downstream user, they have a 3D model and a 2D electrical schematic that they can then refer back to. This does not require them to have any of the software like the Creo Schematic software or Creo Illustrate. Creo View published format of these would allow someone to just open this with just Creo View. So whether they're going into Windchill or you're sharing these files, they can open these directly, these illustrations directly. So I'm going to get into the software itself and go through a live demo presentation of it. So here I have Creo Illustrate running what I'll do is I'll open an existing illustration. I have an illustration here that I've been creating, and this one here consists of several figures in Creo Illustrate. So so far I have about 5 of these figures. Some of these are going to get printed or exported. So for example, figure 1, 2, 3, and 4 are set to export, but the figure here is going to be in a sequence step that I'm going to just create within this file, but export not alongside the rest of these figures. They're going to be exported to another figure or Creo view file. So I kind of designated this not to publish alongside of these, because the rest of these figures are going to get published into a manual, so I'm going to publish them individually. So here I have some of these figures created in my Creo Illustrate software, and these are going to get published to a static figure. What I'll do is I'll create a sequence of steps for the disassembly of some of these components on this machine in this figure here. So the sequencer is under the step editor, and here for this figure it will have its own sequence. So I'm going to start off with the main figure. This figure here is going to be in a white shaded illustration. I'm not going to make it black and white. So I'm just going to put it into this format. And what I'll do here is I'll start disassembling this motor on the side here. So I'm going to create a step sequence to disassemble that motor. So I'm going to start off with this main figure, and let me capture that view. And then I'll add a new step. So here I have step 1 that gets created. And now, right now, I'm in recording mode. There's this little red recording icon. And in the sequence toolbar, this is where I can add additional effects. I can start moving parts around. So right now I'm recording the camera, or excuse me, recording the content. So whatever parts I move, that's what's going to get recorded. I'm not recording the camera yet. So if I spin things around, if I zoom in, zoom out, that's not going to get recorded. But if I want that to happen, I want to maybe zoom into that component. I'm going to also record the camera. So I'm going to just zoom in a few times. That's going to be part of my sequence. And from then on, I'm just going to record my content. So I wish to highlight that it's this component that's going to get exploded. So I can either put notes on the screen, but one simple way to do that is to use some of these effects. So maybe some of these effects I'm going to use as a flash. So I'm going to flash this component in a red color. Now I can use different colors for my different assembly sequences. So maybe step 1 will just use red color. Step 2 will use other colors. Some companies will just use a certain color scheme for that. You can also load your own palette of colors. So if you're reusing colors between sequences, these are just the standard colors that come with the default installation. But sometimes I might use different colors. So in the setup of Creo Illustrate, I can go in here and set up just the general items for my my illustration. One of the things is a color palette, right? So I can choose other colors. I can build their different colors and create a custom palette. So maybe I'm using a color that's some kind of a not quite red, but some kind of a pinkish color. I can add that as a custom color, right? So when I apply these effects to this component, right, I have this custom color that comes up in my palette. Now I have other colors that I can choose from the rest of the palette, but I can limit certain colors for just to be used in these sequences. So if I have maybe 10 steps, I might have 10 colors, one for each sequence. But in this case, I just flash that component, and what I'll do is I'll just start exploding this. So I'll just put in my transformation toolbar, and I'll just take that component off. Now, in my case, I don't have any fasteners in this assembly. I just have some spacers, spacer pins for that component. Obviously, if I had fasteners, I would be able to select those. So I just did a quick and dirty explode here. So once that component is exploded, I might also want to flash in this step what that part number is. So you can use some of these other tools. So I can use maybe some of these annotations like notes. So I can put in this annotation and put in what that part is. Motor from supplier. Right? And that object itself becomes an animation or object within the sequence. Right? So I can use some of these effects, like a fade in and fade out effect, to display the note, and then once I display that note, I can then fade out that note at the end of the sequence, or I can fade that out in the next sequence. Right? So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to keep this in this step. I'm going to create another step, and in step 2, I'm just going to take both the motor and that note, and I'm going to just fade those out. I don't need that in the second step. Okay, so I'm going to just zoom in a bit more for the user to kind of get that information. So I'm going to capture that camera. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take these components here, and I'm also going to explode those out. Now, for the rest of my assembly, I might want to go into my BOM here of the components, and I might just want to maybe isolate this assembly. So once the user knows that I'm zooming into that, I'm just going to isolate that component. It's going to hide everything else. Right? So in my step editor for this figure, that action just hides everything and shows me that just this assembly that I'm working on because I really zoomed in. Right, so that's my step number 2. I just took out those components. So I'm going to just take these components and I'm going to again fade those out. This component here, I can also do the same thing. I can also do a fly out effect. So the same thing that I was dragging, I can just do it now. This is based on the axis that I have here, so I'm going to want to go into the negative X direction. So that's going to do that animation. There's more components in here, so I can again fly out in the negative X direction. This component I'll just fade out, and I'll just continue doing this. Now this is because I'm creating an animation sequence. If I'm creating a printed format, I'd probably put in a lot of notes onto this sequence. So one of the things I can bring up here is a notes page on this step. So for example, on step 1, I've kind of zoomed in, removed a component. On step 2, I've removed other components here. I just put in a note that told this was a motor, but I can also describe this step. So if it's a step note that I want to put in, I can do that. So in my case here, what I can do is just put in a note that says gently remove the motor from supplier. Be careful if it is hot. Now the machine might have been running. Now I need to make sure that it's cooled down enough. So step 2, I might want to say, remove other parts. I can put in specific part numbers of those components if I needed to. So that's my second step. My third step I'm going to create is I'm going to just also kind of explode out some of those other components. So I'll select the rest of these components, and in this case I'm going to do another effect. I'll do a shake. I'll do another shake, Now, all those things that I'm doing, they get put into an animation sequence. So if I pick multiple options, that's just going to add on to the sequence itself. So those components here, I'm going to shake them, but also I'm then going to remove them. Now I probably should have taken that component. So for now, I'll just remove those ones. Now I can also highlight that by coloring them. So in this case, I'm going to color them that custom color. But those are the components in that sequence. Now I can put in my notes. Now if I'm requiring the use of tools to do this, so for example, if I'm removing this motor, I might require some tools to disassemble these screws. I can also include resources in this step. So the resources are inside of the symbol library. So for example, if I'm using, let's say, a wrench to remove some of those screws, I can specify what wrench I'm adding to this sequence. So for example, if I'm adding a wrench to my illustration here, I can display it graphically, scale it if I need to, or just include that component as a resource. Each component itself so depending on your tool library, I'm also going to include another component. This is going to be a component that has some information. This is an oil can. So if the screw's difficult to remove, kind of lubricate it a bit or use some other tool. So in this case, I have this information coming up, the oil can. The screwdriver didn't give me any information. That's okay. I'm going to edit some of the information there. Now it's telling me that it's using 1 liter and the description is to apply it liberally. Now where is this coming from? So this is coming from my symbol library. So if I open up my symbol library and go to these consumables, notice here is the information, and I can go in and edit that component. So for example, here I can go into that consumable directly, and okay, now this one is locked from editing, so I can't edit this directly. I can add other components in here. Okay, I'm going to go into my my setup here. Okay, I have my system set up to prevent editing these because if you're using this as a standard library, I would have to go back and unlock this. So I'm not going to do that right now. What I will do is kind of highlight some of these components. Now, when I create a new component in here, I can classify a category of that component, and I can classify these details on that component. So if I'm putting in a new file, I'll just do, I'll just create a new one here. So I'll put in a hammer file. This is going to be a new component. So this is a 3D model. I'm just adding another hammer. So in this case, I'm going to put in a hammer custom. Maybe it's a mallet. It's called mallet. I can put in a category. So this is going to be a tool. And the tags are going to allow me to put in what is this component. So let's say this is procedure, and the description that appears here when I put it in, I'll call it rubber mallet. I'll say okay. That's what's going to appear when I insert that component. So I just added that new library component, and if I go back into the symbol library, that mallet component gets added. Now if I put it into my my illustration, this becomes now a procedure. So the procedure of using that component is listed in the instructions. So it's, I didn't specify that it's a resource, but it's a procedure that just comes with its own notes. I'm going to see that later when I preview this sequence itself. So whenever I'm using these consumables and procedures, they will appear in my illustrations, right? So whenever I use it on the first figure of a sequence, they're going to appear on the rest of the steps in that sequence. So when I'm done with these tools on the next sequence, I have to hide them, right? So in my sequence, that's only used for this step 1. In step 2, I'm going to fade those out. So now all the subsequent steps are not going to have that tool visible anymore. So only this sequence. So that means if I forget to do something on the first step that should apply to the other steps, all these steps will update with that change. But if I do something to one step, it only propagates the changes downward. Okay, so I created some simple steps here. I created 3 of these. I'll save this file. So this is going to be my illustration file. If I go back into my figures, notice now I have this figure, but those sequence figures are going to be shown differently. It's going to show me that this is a sequence of steps here, and if I go to the step editor, that's going to show me those. Now I can preview that sequence. So right now, when I go to my preview toolbar, this is going to allow me to have a playback mechanism. So here, for example, it shows me what those components I'm using, what the notes are in the sequence. So the first step allows me to show that note that I created, and also the text from my instructions just on the top left-hand corner here. So if I play back the next sequence step, it kind of animates those things, and I created everything in one sequence. I probably shouldn't have done that. So it just hides everything at once and goes into the next step, remove other parts. Step 3 is taking out those parts. Now as they're getting removed, they if I go back to the previous step, they get kind of animated. Now if I'm printing this, only the last step of that animation will be shown. Now if you are putting notes on the screen and you need to translate these to other languages, you can also preview these in Illustrate in a different language. So if you've created the text for the other language, you can show those as well on that animation. So everywhere that you have notes that are, for example, in English and you want to show them in other languages, that will automatically switch to that other language if you want to preview that instruction in that language. But most of the time we want to create these illustrations with as little text as possible, because you really don't want to incur all these translation costs or effort of translating text. So if I can do this graphically, pictures, like they say, are worth 1,000 words. So I created a sequence here. I played this back. Let me close that sequence of steps. Once I'm done with this, I can also publish these sequence of steps. So I can publish these to a Creo view file, so this PVZ file. I can publish this locally. So if I, for example, I'll just call this manual 1. I'll publish this into my folder. I could then use Creo View to open that file and preview that sequence of steps. Okay, so if I go back into my my folder here, I will have a PVZ here called Manual 1, and I can open this file with Creo View. Right, so the user in Windchill or someone who does not have Creo Illustrate can open up your series of figures. So this is Creo View. If I look at figure 1, it's going to load that figure that was published from that assembly. And this is going to take a few seconds here to load that. And each of these figures are going to have an illustration that I can load in Creo View. Now, Creo View is also available in the Express version, so for those people who just want to view these illustrations, you can also use the free Creo View Express viewer. So if you're sending this to your customers, they can actually open it up if they have that Creo View Express. So let me go to figure 2. So those are the same figures that appeared in my illustrations, figure 4. And figure 3 was that one with the sequence of steps. No, actually, there was a disassembly figure. But in my case, I just published 4 of these figures because in Creo Illustrate, I told it not to publish this sequence itself. If I disable that, that would be also in that illustration. Okay, so that's the Creo View file. I'll close that out. I think I have 2 of these open. So really here, I just want to publish this figure. So I'm gonna turn off that do not publish flag on that. I'm also going to publish that one. So I'll just do the manual again. Now this is publishing it to a PVZ file, so that's only if you want it electronically. I can also save this figure out into one of these other files, just this one figure. I can also print all of these steps into an individual page of a PDF. So if you have a PDF printer, you would need a PDF printer or something on your system to print this out to. I can print all of these steps into a separate page. So I can, for example, print that into a PDF file, and each of those steps would be a separate page once that PDF file is created. So while that file is creating in the background, let's open up that manual again with Creo View. So now I have that disassembly figure. So if I switch to that figure, on this figure I have the ability to play back those steps. So I have a playback toolbar. This figure is getting loaded. And I can play back this sequence directly from the Creo View file. So here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3. And those were the final steps. So in my case, this is purely electronic. The PDF files should have been created, and it's just launching now. So here's the first page of the figure. Now I just put it into a default setup. I didn't set up the pages or the extents yet. I probably should. Maybe I want this thing to be landscape instead of portrait mode, so I can do that, right? So in my case, I exported this out as a color into the PDF. Obviously, if you're going to print this, you might want to export it out as a black and white. But each of these step pages and the general start figure is a separate page on the figure itself in the PDF. So that's another option. So that was the sequencer. I'm going to do another figure here. So I'll create a a new figure starting in the default view. This figure here will just be a general animation figure. So I'll kind of start off with this view here, and on this figure, I'll just start off with this this view, and I'll just do a general animation. So there's an animation toolbar in Creo Illustrate that I can use. So it's very similar to the sequencer. You know, once I turn on the animation toolbar, this allows me to, you know, kind of create these keyframe sequences of animations. I can import animations. If you are creating animations inside of your Creo parametric mechanism module, you can export out that mechanism animation and import it into Creo Illustrate. So that mechanism animation could be used to accurately move components. If you want to see playback of this belt moving or something, if you create that on the on the kinematic side in MDX in the mechanism module in Creo Parametric, you can import that directly into Creo Illustrate. Or I can go in here and start animating my you know, my component. So here I'm going to record the camera, and what I'll do is I'll just zoom in to this area here. I'm also going to record that movement. I'm also going to spin it around to take a look at this from a different perspective. Right. So if I go back to the beginning and just animate that playback, right, that just does whatever I just did by recording the camera. Right. And then again, I can start taking those components and exploding them from that perspective. And again, I can add effects like, you know, unscrewing and so on. So then if I play back that animation, this will kind of play back that general animation. So I can also export this to different formats. So I can create movie files. The different formats that you'll have available are going to depend on the codecs that are installed on your Windows system. So if I don't have options for other formats, the default one that gets installed is the Windows movie format. But if I want to do like AVIs or MP4s, you can download codecs or install them onto your Windows system, and it's going to use that format directly. I can put in options here. So if I do that export, this is going to go through and write that movie file. So now I can take that movie file and open it with Windows Media Player or something like that and share this with other people outside of Creo Illustrate. So this is capturing my movie that I'm showing on the screen right now. Within this animation toolbar, I can get some additional details. So if this is too fast or too slow between the transition steps, I can kind of move around. This is number of seconds, so I can kind of move around how fast each of these steps occurs. I can move this sequence of steps, right? So if I want this to take more or less, I can, you know, I can define granularly each of those steps in my animation. So this is a general animation module just used for 3D within Creo Illustrate that I could use. Okay, I'm not sure where my animation went. It's somewhere in here, I think. Let's go demo first. There it is down here. So if I double click on that, this is just a movie player that shows that animation. Now this is a bit fast, so I might want to slow down a bit, so it takes more seconds to transition between steps. But that's the playback animation that I created. So now I can share this with somebody if I needed to. Okay, so one last thing I also wanted to do is I wanted to show the integration just here for the last couple of minutes that are left, and then I'll take some questions. So I'll show the integration between Windchill. So there is a workgroup manager for Creo Illustrate. So if I register Creo Illustrate with Windchill, I can then check in, check out my illustrations and place my illustrations directly from within the Windchill system onto my or into Creo Illustrate. So I'm going to add Creo Illustrate as an application into my Windchill system. So I'll register that workgroup manager with Creo Illustrate. This is Creo Illustrate 4 that I'm using. What that's going to do when I do that is going to allow me to communicate with Windchill. So if I exit that and launch Creo Illustrate again, this is now going to give me Windchill toolbars within Creo Illustrate. So I do that registration once. Now you can see there's a Windchill group within Creo Illustrate. So if I connect to the Windchill system, I'm going to be prompted for a username and password. And the Workgroup Manager window will launch alongside. So I'm just going to log into my system here. And now I have right within Creo Illustrate, the check-in, check-out operations. So I'm going to just use a workspace here that I have within the system. And I'm going to create a new illustration, but in this case I'm going to link to an illustration within the Windchill system. So here I have the ability to open illustrations inside of the Windchill system within Creo Illustrate. That menu option is popping up. I also have inside Creo Illustrate the ability to place files from Windchill. So within Windchill, if I go to my Windchill cabinets, I have a illustration folder that I don't know if I have any in this folder or not. I can place Creo view files. So every time that I check in a CAD assembly into Windchill, the visualization worker will create that lightweight Creo view file. So this is what I'm placing into my illustrations. Unfortunately, this server that I registered doesn't have any of these created, so that was probably a bad example. What I'll do is here, I'll just place a general file into my my Creo Illustrate session and save that file directly into my Windchill system. So I'll go back into my my folder here, and I'll go into my Creo Illustrate folder where I have these files. So I'm going to place a figure just from the local system for now into Creo Illustrate. So I'll just do one figure. There's going to be another assembly. It's going to be an arm from an excavator. So I'll just do this as a black and white figure. And I'll just save this as a component into my workspace. So I'll call this manual demo and hit save. Okay, so now that is going to appear in my workspace. So if I go into my Workgroup Manager, I have an illustration file that is shown in my local workspace, and I can then check that file into Windchill. So the illustration file itself is a C3DI file. It's a graphic object, and I can do a a check-in into the Windchill system. So what I'll do here is I'll just pick a folder I'm checking in the first time, so I'll do a custom check-in. This is going to publish my viewable for this manual on demand. You can have your CAD worker do this as well, your visualization worker. So that's just saving that preview file for me in a lightweight format. This might be a large assembly, so it's going to compress that for me. It's typically around 1/5 of the file size, so it's going to be very lightweight file to open. Once I check in this C3DI file, then the users going into Windchill will be able to open up a Creo view representation of that manual. So if they don't have Creo Illustrate, they wouldn't need it to see the figures within that manual that they have access to. So the system will create that list of figures for me directly into Windchill in the Creo view format when I do that check-in. So this is publishing it into that format. This is going to be consistent of just one figure. And then when I do that, it's going to give me the custom check-in process, the custom check-in window, and go through the process of checking it into Windchill. So I know we're kind of running up on time. I'm probably going to leave it at that. It's might take another minute or so, and I wanted to get into any questions that you have had while we're waiting for that to check in. So I'll try to answer any questions that you may have had. You can enter those into the question and chat area in the GoToMeeting toolbar. If you have any questions following this webinar, feel free to submit them to your TriStar sales representative, or go to our website, and someone will be happy to assist you there. Don't see any questions coming in right now. I think my check-in toolbar has come up, so I'm just going to put it into a folder within Windchill. I'll just put this into the top level demo product that I have into the CAD folder. And I'll just finish that check-in process. That's going to upload it. So while I wait for questions, that's going to check in. And I'm going to open my Windchill system through a web browser. So this is going to assume that now I'm going in as a person who wants to view that illustration. And log into Windchill, and I can either search for that or go into my demo product to see where that illustration is. So I'll get into my Windchill system, into that CAD folder, and I should have that, among the other parts, I should have that user manual listed as another object within Windchill. So in my case, I have here revision of this illustration. Shortly, I will have this this viewable that I can take a look at the illustration if I don't have Creo Illustrate. So that just creates another visual here for me, and here in my case it just popped up. So I can open this in Creo View, so someone can go in here and look at what the illustrations were created from this manual. Okay, while I open up that illustration, I'll take some questions. So there's some questions around, can I have multiple steps on a single page? No. When you publish it, it will put each step onto its own separate page. So right now with the software, you cannot have those multiples. I'm not sure what the question means. Maybe you can clarify it. During animation, something about exploding. I'm not sure I understand that question. Can you reverse the order of operations? So you want to kind of show the assembly sequence backwards, but you want to explode it out one way. I believe there is a toggle. There is a way to kind of play it back in reverse. I'd have to look at the options. I'm not sure where that is, or which version of Illustrate that is, or whether it's coming up. So I'm not going to answer yes or no, but I believe there could be a way. I'd have to look into that. Another question is, what type of files can you import as new symbols? So they're typically going to be Creo view files. So you would need Creo view or Creo parametric to create these, to import these 3D files, and then you can export them as Creo view files if you want them to be in 3D. Those would then be able to import as those 3D symbol objects. Now if you just have an image, like a picture of a symbol or a note or something that you want to import into your illustration, then you can import like a 2D flat picture as a JPEG or a bitmap. So that would be just imported as an image. Okay, so for the animation, do you need to explode components individually, or can you have a predefined set of components? So on the animation toolbar, there's there's the ability to group components. So if you can pick them from the structure tree, right? You can kind of pick multiple components at once. Inside of and this is not Illustrate, this is Illustrate. So on that toolbar, you can select multiple components that way. You can also do a smart explode as well. So during the animation, you can use this smart explode, which would allow you to pick like several components and choose a direction of explode, depending on those components. So you can kind of pick groups, couple components together to be exploded at once. That way. If you have exploded states defined within Creo parametric, you can reuse some of those exploded states within Creo Illustrate. But again, if you want to animate those, then you have to kind of use either the Smart Explode tool or just pick components from the tree and explode them in groups. As a sequence of steps. Okay, so I'll kind of get to one more question here before we wrap up the webinar. I see, is there a library of symbols? So, in the Creo Illustrate, these are the symbols that come with the software, right? So if you need more symbols, you would build up your own library. So you would need to import additional symbols that don't exist here. Now this is just symbols for 3D. Most of these are 3D symbols. So when I place these on the illustration, they are actually, that symbol goes. So they are actually 3D objects, right? So I can manipulate these in 3D space. So if you need your own custom symbols, maybe sometimes you want to put in things like hands or other tools, you would need to import those into the symbol library and then build up your own symbols that way. All right, I want to thank everyone. I know we kind of ran extra here on time. I want to thank everyone for attending this webinar and your questions. If you want to see more information about Creo Illustrate, feel free to contact us, and we'll be happy to give you some additional information. If you want to evaluate the software, contact your PTC, your TriStar rather, sales representative, and I'm sure they'll be happy to help you. Okay, thank you everyone, and have a great day.